we have lined up all of these pins by putting one plate on top of the other one, piloting the holes when we had the bolts, lining it up. Now we have to take the engine plate, which is this one. These four corner holes have to be tapped. So these are going to be drilled out with a different size drill. So we're going to be actually drilling both plates again to pilot them together. We have top and top marked. Here's top and top. Put them like this. We will put dowels in here to hold them. Then we're going to drill these corner holes all the same, and we're going to actually use those to bolt this plate to this plate with the spaces in between with the bolts. Well, these holes on the corners are all for these stanchions that we're doing. What we're going to do is we're going to drill these holes to the 8mm size for these to go all the way through, and we're going to pin both plates together. So first we're going to do that. We're going to drill all of these, pin them together. Then we're going to drill these to pilot to these with a bigger drill. This plate needs to be tapped. This plate needs to be drilled out even bigger so the bolts will slide through. So that's the process that we're going to do now. What we've done so far is we've pinned opposite corners. We've measured in here by using a scribe or a compass to get the closest to absolute center that we can. And this is about as close as I can get. I still have to machine this just a tiny, tiny bit for the seal. So hopefully the seal will be able to take up any hundreds of thousands of difference. We don't want to have to be that specific, but we want to be close enough so that the shaft doesn't wobble in that or put pressure on the seal in one point or another. So we've got we're just using these for pins. We've got these lined up. We're going to do two at a time. We'll drill this one, we'll put another pin, another bolt, we'll do this one, put another bolt. We'll keep doing it all the way around till we get all of our dowel bolts in where they're supposed to be. Then we're going to drill out the actual mounting bolts and mount the two plates together. And we got to remember that the engine side has to be tapped. The clutch side has to have the heads loose fit, so there's two different size holes. So we're going to continue to do this all the way around, but you can see what we're doing, how I'm triggering it together. I'm trying to lock it to dead center. And we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed that we're getting it the tolerances as close as we need them. At this point, we have put both of these plates together, turned them on the lathe so that the outside is exactly the same. We also locked the engine plate, which was perfect. We wanted to have that's the criteria for the clutch plate. So some of these holes didn't come out 100%. So what we had to do was find the closest to zero that we could get, bolt them together, put this on the lathe, centered in here. With this spinning, we are able to get this lined up perfectly. So by putting a bolt in here and a bolt in here, finding which one's lined up the best, and tunking it until it was spinning on the lathe, this one was turning center, and this one was turning center. Now we have fastened these together with just two bolts. We've got one here and one here, and I have to marry every one of these holes so that when we bolt it together, there won't be any misalignments. They're not all lined up. So what we're going to try to do, we've got threaded holes that have to stay. Those are criteria. So we're going to take the open holes that go to the threaded holes, and we're going to cut the open holes with a milling tool to try to line them up perfectly with the hole that's down below. And that should allow us to put all the bolts together without anything being off-centered. So right now what we're trying to do is find the right drill. I actually have a little milling bit as well. I don't know if just the drill will do it or if I need the milling bit to be able to cut down in there. I have to line up one with the other. and I can't have them too loose, because if they're too loose then the bolts will flop. So one plate needs to stay perfect and the other one can be offset just a little bit to be able to adjust all the bolts. So that's where we're at this point. So right now I'm just going to see if I can figure out which holes I need to align. We're going to go ahead and do that, and then when I get done we're going to bolt this all together and see how the clutch lines up. We have now permanently mounted these. They're all Loctited on. This plate's going to be mounted onto the spare engine. We're going to mock up our assembly. These bolts are being tightened in now to simulate once this is on the airplane engine. So we're going to tighten these on. The process to get this mounted is very tricky. We're going to have to do a clock type mounting, so I can't leave the plate to the gearbox, has to remain loose. And I'll show you why here in a minute. I hope this camera is picking up everything I'm doing here. Alright, so we've got our assembly here. Clutch piece is on here. This will be tightened on. Even when it's tight, I've got 60 thousandths clearance, so when it tightens up it should be closer to about 30, maybe 35. Now this part is where it gets tricky, because this plate has to mount onto here. What I discovered is the gearbox has to be turned all the way upside down to get the bottom one started, and then I have to get this one and this one started, then turn to get all the rest of them started one at a time. Once we get it completely done, we turn it back upside down, upside right where it's supposed to be. Then we can start mounting these bolts into here, and that will hold that. With 3 bolts, there's going to be one here, going to be one on each side like this. So it's going to have one on the bottom, but I can't get in there. But that's okay, because these are actually holding it together. These are just for added structural support. The spin test comes out beautiful. There's no drag, no rutting. I'm very happy with this setup. Now the next thing to do is we have to take these 2 bolts here, these 4 bolts. We have to drill these for safety wire. We have to cut these bolts for length. We have to cut off 3/8 of an inch on each one of these so that they don't go all the way through into the engine, because there's a cylinder here. We've got stuff on the side of the engine over here, so we don't want them to go all the way through the block. So looks like the project this far is a success. Our next series of video here, we'll be putting it on the airplane and testing it out.